Good morning and welcome to another edition of the National Newspaper Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. In a new report released last week, the Government Accountability Office estimated that 5.2 million students aged 12 to 18 were bullied in the 2018-2019 school year, and 1 in 4 of them experienced bullying related to their race, national origin, religion, disability, gender, or sexual orientation. We discussed that this morning with photojournalist extraordinaire Anthony Tilghman. But first, of course, let us tackle the headlines this morning. In the news, the Tennessee Tribune, and we are live right now from Nashville, Tennessee. The Tennessee Tribune and its publisher, Rosetta Perry, was celebrated at a sold-out 30th anniversary gala on Sunday, featuring gospel legend Dr. Bobby Jones, NNPA Chair Karen Carter Richards, and NNPA President and CEO Dr. Benjamin Chavis Jr. The gala featured Dr. Glenda Glover and so many others. You had politicians. The mayor of Nashville showed up, and Miss Perry, of course, was her gracious self, talking about how the newspaper has been a great part of this community here in Nashville, and others talked about how Rosetta Perry has been a beacon for the Black press here in Tennessee. What an evening in Nashville. What a day. She also opened an airport shop at the main airport here in Nashville. The Tennessee Tribune store is open to the public, and it's beautiful. We should be bringing you some photos of that as the days come. But again, we celebrate Miss Rosetta Perry, the publisher of the Tennessee Tribune, a member of the National Newspaper Publishers Association. Also in the news this morning, for the first time in 2 months, the U.S. is averaging more than 100,000 new COVID-19 cases each day, shortly after millions of Americans traveled for the Thanksgiving holiday. The 7-day moving average of new cases was 124,437 as of Saturday, according to information from Johns Hopkins University. Prior to this week, the U.S. last topped the 100,000 case a day mark in early October. Also on the rise is the number of COVID-19 deaths, with a 7-day average of 1,651 people dying from the virus each day as of Saturday. Average daily deaths haven't been this high in more than a month. The vast majority of new cases, of course, continue to be from the Delta variant, but U.S. health officials have detected the new Omicron coronavirus variant in at least 16 states as of Saturday. The first case was found in California last Wednesday, and by this past weekend, the variant had been identified in 15 other states, including Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Louisiana, Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, Missouri, Utah, Washington, and other places. The variant has been alarming officials because early indications show it could be more contagious than the original strain of the coronavirus. And the significant number of mutations it carries poses a potential risk of reducing some of the effectiveness the current vaccines provide. Scientists are working to determine the severity and transmissibility of Omicron, but that could take weeks, officials have said. And again, it's worth noting that the National Newspaper Publishers Association has advocated the use of masks. They've advocated the vaccinations and the booster shots that have now come out to protect against the coronavirus. It's important that we all stay safe. Well, this morning, bullying has come to the fore. The Government Accountability Office has estimated that 5.2 million students aged 12 to 18 were bullied in the 2018-2019 school year, the latest available data, and 1 in 4 of them experienced bullying related to their race, national origin, religion, disability, gender, or sexual orientation. And in the same school year, the report says there were 1.6 million students who were subjected to hate speech due to their identity. A lot of it has to do, well, a lot of it involves attacking African American students. To talk about it this morning is the author of Make Smart Cool. He is the originator, I should say, of Make Smart Cool photojournalist Anthony Tilghman. Good morning, Anthony.
Hey, good morning.
Anthony, this report, probably not surprising, but still alarming, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's definitely it's not surprising at all. I mean, bullying has been an issue for a long time, and as you know, it's finally really coming to light as far as young children because they're finally coming out and actually having a conversation about it and telling their parents and officials that it's been an issue, a long going issue in the schools and particularly with the African American community because we're always often discriminated everywhere else. You know what I'm saying? And that's pretty much I think is the biggest issue right now is that we're constantly battling racism in America every single day.
Yeah, and Anthony, in that report of those thousands and thousands of incidents of bullying, 50%, a little bit more than 50% was about race.
Mm. Yep, and absolutely, and I think that's the biggest issue is that we have an ongoing issue right now with just history taught in schools, African American history. We don't really understand the people don't understand the value of our history of our ancestors and what they went through in schools and I think critical race theory is also a huge issue right now in schools because they don't understand what that means. And I think that's where the issue comes in as far as participation in actually having a conversation on race in schools and really solving this issue of just lack of knowledge on African American studies, African American race, and just general education on bullying and how to prevent it. There's no actual prevention methods given to school officials. There's no proper training for police officers and schools, and right now we have an issue of just ongoing lack of knowledge on everybody's part, and that's what needs to change. We need to do more preventative methods in schools to prevent bullying and really have an actual solution in place to stop this hatred.
Yeah, Anthony. Okay, so preventative measures, and I agree wholeheartedly. But when you have, because included in this report, Anthony, there are educators who are also participating in this bullying.
I mean, and that's very sad as well. Our educators are trained, to prevent classroom. Well, they're trained in classroom management. You know what I'm saying? And the thing about it is we're not properly, handling issues correctly in the classroom as well. So
Yeah,
we
and keep.
see our videos every day of teachers in classrooms and I think that's what's happening. The old school methods aren't really getting the much coverage as new school because like right now every kid in school have a camera. They're recording everything and that's where this bullying come to life. You never noticed it before this social media age.
Yeah, and we've seen a lot the last 4 or 5 years or so, especially. It seems like it continues to increase this idea of racism, and not to get off topic. For instance, just yesterday it was revealed that the owner of Better Homes, or Better.com, I should say, the CEO, Vishal Garg, of course, Better.com is a mortgage company. They laid off 900 employees over Zoom, and in that, among those who were fired was the entire diversity, equity, and inclusion recruiting team. It really spells out a whole lot as to where we are, doesn't it?
Wow. I mean that's very shocking, man. I mean, you and that's one thing that's actually needed in schools more is a diversity and inclusion specialist and more mental health therapists and counselors are needed in schools now. Typically, any school only really have 1 to 2 therapists for a whole school And you have, that's an average of like 3 to 500 kids, and that's the problem. You really can't go to someone when you're having problems, and parents are just overwhelmed with issues at home to really focus on home and school. It needs to be preventative methods in place to really have an actual protocol when you're getting bullied, and that protocol needs to be documented and updated regularly. I mean, if your child is getting bullied at school, and they know that, they go to a school official and tell them that they're getting bullied, and that school official don't properly document that incident, then that's pretty much it's going to be an ongoing issue. And I think that's where we need to really take a pause and really update that strategy. Every school needs a mental health therapist. Every school needs a nurse. Every school needs a physical person that's going to actually take those protocols seriously, and let everyone know, as far as the principal, the parent, and also a action plan to really put that in place to follow up
Yeah.
and prevent.
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge this morning. I mean, she watches every morning, but our chair, Karen Carter Richards, is watching this morning. She's here in Tennessee as well to salute Rosetta Perry of the Tennessee Tribune. What an event last night. I want to lift up a couple of comments. Anthony, Bobby Henry of the West Side Gazette in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, he says that there are bullies in the form of authorities. He says it does with I'm trying to understand, Bobby, with looks, body language. Okay, it has to do with looks, body language, grading, and a whole lot more. And that's really something too, because we mentioned a moment ago about educators being a part of that report. And Bobby points out that it has to do also with looks, body language, and grading.
Yeah, I mean, educators are overwhelmed right now. Educators are police officers, they're teachers, they're counselors. They do so many things right now, and they are overwhelmed with just work. You can't expect the teacher to have to grade, plan, learn new technologies, and also have to deal with classroom management. It's just too overwhelming for them, man. And I can see why they're kind of frustrated. And and that's where the bullying comes from. The bullying comes from the administration, because your principal is getting information on how to run the school, and he's directly asking the teachers to do more. And we don't even have enough teachers or substitutes to pretty much control this demand. And one thing we need more is we need more African American teachers.
Yeah.
Teachers. Most students relate better to a person of color that actually they can look up to, rather than someone that just come to school just to participate. You know what I'm saying? You
Well,
got teachers right now that just just pop into school, and then they leave, and then the substitute is actually there the whole year.
yeah, yeah,
Not
and
fair.
I'll take it one step further. Many reports, and the Black press has reported on this, that as you said, when it's a teacher of color, students do better, and that also includes, Anthony, white students. They do better when they have teachers of color, according to many reports. And like I said, we certainly have reported on that. James Wright of the Washington Informant says many school districts cut school counseling positions pre-pandemic. He says, I bet they wish they didn't do that now. And I want to read just a little bit more from the report, Anthony, and get your response. The agency, the Government Accountability Office, found that while students experience a range of hostile behaviors, hate is widespread in schools. More than 1,500 schools reported having at least one hate crime occur, and about 5.8 million students said they saw hate words or symbols written at school. Alarming indeed, right?
Wow. I mean, it's not really shocking to me, because you have teachers that come to school, and they really just hate their job. And I think that's the issue right now, is we have to really focus more on actually mental health issues in school. And this pandemic has really shut these kids down. This isolation, then you're telling them to just go back to school and everything's normal. We still have the same issues in school that we had pre-pandemic, and those are not solved at all. So why are you expecting hundreds of thousands of kids to go back to school and act like nothing's happening at home, or the same issues is happening before the pandemic? Will everything will become normal? Normalcy is not a thing now. We can't go back to normal. There's no such thing as normalcy. That's the only thing we can actually do is improve. We have to improve education. We have to improve awareness, and we have to improve participation. We have to let our teachers know that we're actually depending on you, and we're going to pay you. We're going to up that pay because we're actually believing in your process to actually help our kids in their future. And we need more future leaders of America to want to be teachers, because teachers are they're amazing, people, and they train, they mentor, they train, and they educate our kids for the future. They're without teachers, we can't have an education system. So they are really a priority in now in this country right now.
Yeah, again, we're talking with Anthony Tilghman, the photojournalist extraordinary. You got to check Anthony out. He's all over social media at Anthony Tilghman. Anthony is also the originator of Make Smart Cool. He works with younger ones, and he endorses being smart, education. This is his topic, everybody. Anthony, you mentioned a little earlier the critical race theory. We hear that a lot. And then I noticed some of our viewers sometimes say, well, what exactly is critical race theory? Can you break it down a little bit?
Well, critical race theory is pretty much it's more so an introduction to pretty much so pretty much it's more of like a outbreak of cases pretty much that kind of show us that that race happens in every kind of method of education and training. I mean, you can't, our history is being taught, and our history is under I say under attack right now as far as education in the schools. They don't want African American history taught in schools because it's not really no training or method for it. And I think that's where the critical race theory comes in, is that people don't really think that African American history matters, and we want to kind of remove that from the classrooms, and that's where the African American, when I was in school, we had an African American history teacher, and that teacher taught us about history. And I think that's where every kid, whether you're black, white, Asian, or any color, you need to learn about all history. You need to learn about history that affects your culture. You need to learn about history that affects your future. And you also need to learn about history that took place that reflect our ancestors. And I think that's where critical race theory comes in place, because we're teaching from a old structure that history book isn't adequate and actually teaching us the whole truth. And that's where it needs to change, and education needs to be taught both ways, from the perspective of our ancestors and the perspective of actual events that took place.
Yeah. And Anthony, it's so interesting. We're talking about this topic. You actually have a book coming out, a children's book that kind of talks about this, don't you?
Yes. So I have a book coming out called it's called Black Male, Black Hoodie. Because when the police officer pulls you over and they look for a description, they put black male, black hoodie, and black male, black hoodie is not a description. It's you can't look for a black male with a black hoodie on. That's not a description. So my book talks about that issue to our youth. It teaches our youth that black males and with a black hoodie on is not a description, and it is kind of like a lesson that teaches our youth that racism is everywhere, and we have to hold people accountable as far as that description of our young males. When you are in a place where you are accused of looking like a gangster because you have a black hoodie on, that's the issue in America right now with race. Trayvon Martin had a black hoodie on, what I'm saying? And you automatically thought that he was a thug, regardless of what you know to be the facts, that he was just a black male with a black hoodie on. You don't know people's past. You don't know people's history. You know what I'm saying? If you see a white male with a black hoodie on, you don't assume the same thing.
Yeah.
And that's the issue in America right now with racism, is that we are characterized by what we wear rather than what we do.
Yeah. Anthony, do you by chance have a cover of the book you can show our audience?
Yes. Well, I don't know if I can actually show my screen here.
No, you can't do it out here, but
Yeah.
we'll lift it up later this week to make sure people know that you plan to have it released hopefully by the end of the month, or certainly if not sooner. So we'll be looking for that. David Youngblood said it's not the hoodie. That's a convenient excuse. And going back to critical race theory, James Wright, he says that these clueless parents who attack critical race theory should come to school budget hearings to see how the school board spends or misuses their money. And that's the other thing, right? How school boards, because we know certainly those who live in states that really have high school taxes, we know that money is flowing into school districts. It's how they're using it, right?
Yes, I mean, because the critical race theory is how we're taught in school as far as what racism is. You have to it's a actually it's a curriculum that talks about the relationship between racism and power. And I think that's where all of the tension comes in from the schools, because you have white teachers that refuse to talk about African American history, and that's where it comes into play as far as where your study comes in place. If you refuse to teach what's there, then you're limiting our education as far as our young scholars. If you don't really know anything about our history, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, Martin Luther, MLK, Malcolm X. You're limiting our future and our history, and I think that's where we come in place. And this past 2 years, we had so many protests around the world, and most of the common issues was that people really didn't know that Black Lives mattered. You know what I'm saying? And that's sad that we have to face racism more than any other, genre. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's the problem that we face today, is that so many people mischaracterize what Black lives, have been through. And that needs to be taught. It needs to be, constantly promoted, and it needs to be constantly advocated for, because we matter. You know what I'm saying? Black lives matter. You know what I'm saying? And that's one thing that we have to really, focus on as far as teaching our youth, is that you have to know your history in order to really have a great future. History, one thing that we always say is, you talk to a wise person, wise, wise, you get the history from the wiser people. You talk to an older person and they hit you on the future. They hit you on that history that you learn about, and you sometimes you sit there and talk to them, and they tell you about the past, and you kind of get shocked. You say, wow, I mean, you ever had a conversation with somebody that been through something, and it kind of makes you like, wow, like, man, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, just sit there and just like, wow, that like you've been through that. And you know, I really, you know, it's one thing I really want to know, you know, one of the things I always wanted to know, and you know, as a young person, is, you know, just like if you watch TV and you see all these remakes, you know what I'm saying, of different, of different moments in history. And one thing I really wanted to do, I really wanted to just sit down and have a conversation with Rosa Parks about that bus. Wow. You know, this like what really happened? You know what I'm saying? Like this walk me through this bus situation. You know what I'm saying? Like give me the behind the scenes of that bus. You know what I'm saying? Because like that's one thing that you kind of look at, and especially every year you say, you know, wow. Like she really.
Well, I think what you're doing is making a great case. I couldn't agree more. That, and you're, like you said, you're a young one. Young ones, talk to your grandparents while you still have them. Talk to your parents while you still have them. Talk to, Uncle John or Aunt, Bessie or whomever. Right? Get that knowledge, get that information, because truly, the experience counts for a whole lot. And, you hear that saying, Anthony, that especially parents, I did this, so you don't have, I went through this, so you don't have to go through that. Just want to mention one other point before we close. Claudette Perry, the executive administrator of the NNPA, she says, Anthony, African American history is American history. And so as we think about this report, you'll be reading more about this government accountability report at blackpressusa.com and many of the newspapers in the National Newspaper Publicists Association. Anthony Tilghman, there it is, Black Male, Black Hoodie by Anthony Tilghman. You guys look out for this. He expects to drop it on Amazon later this month. So keep on the lookout, but look out for his other work. He's doing a whole lot of stuff. You can see him in the Washington Informer and other publications around the country, because he is, as I said, the photojournalist extraordinaire. The NNPA's Midwinter Training Conference kicks off on January the 19th. We'll be at the beautiful Diplomat Beach Resort in Hollywood, Florida through the 22nd, where the theme is the publishing industry, advancing the Black press of America, reaffirming, engaging, and empowering. Visit www.nnpa-events.com to register and reserve your hotel rooms in order to get the very, very special NNPA's discounted rate. Please book your hotel room by December the 12th. That deadline is fast approaching, and so is that conference. You don't want to miss it. Our first in-person conference in more than 2 years. And our Black newspaper fact of the day: the first African-American newspaper, Freedom's Journal, the first African-American owned and operated newspaper, began circulating in 1827. In the first issue of Freedom's Journal, the newspaper editors, John Brown Rushworm and Samuel Cornish, wrote, "We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us." It was published from 1827 to 1829. And you got to think about the context in which it was published before the end of slavery. Freedom's Journal covered regional, national, and international news and addressed the issues of slavery and colonization, which involved the repatriation of free African Americans to Africa. Freedom's Journal helped lead the way for other Black-owned newspapers in the 19th century. By 1861, over 40 Black-owned newspapers operated and circulated throughout the United States. So we remember, of course, our founding newspaper of the Black press, Freedom's Journal. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. And remember, this virus is real. It's been real for almost 2 years. Wear a mask, folks. Social distance where necessary. And if you can, get vaccinated. Stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow.